the Honorable Pinky Kekana, the CEO of Solidarity Fund South Africa, Ms. Gloria Sirobe, one of the conveners of the Gertrude Shopé Women Mediators Network and the Special Advisor to the Ministry of Women, Youth and People with Disabilities, Ms. Mabato Ramagoshi, and from RMB Diversity and Inclusion Advisory is Ms. Rendani Baumgartner. So we are truly honored to have you with us today. Thank you so much for taking the time out to do that. However, before we get to you, the session is proudly brought to you by GCIS. And to officially open the session, please welcome the DDG of GCIS, the wonderful Mr. Michael Curran. Mr. Curran, the floor is yours.
Goodness me, what a wonderful, rousing word of welcome. And I hope that is going to set the tone for this meeting. Yavi, thank you so much, program moderator. Very, very gracious words from you. Thank you. The Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Ms. Pinky Kekana, who many of us have had the privilege to work with for quite a while, particularly with issues of really activating gender machinery and the interface with gender machinery and the mainstream issues of society. Rendani Baumgartner, Ms. Sirobe will join us shortly, as well as my dear colleague Mabato from the Women's Ministry. Fellow South Africans and those of you who are online and those of you who are in the chat group, greetings to you from Government Communications. Moderator, Deputy Minister, friends, you know, I like that expression that says, blessed are peacemakers. It's an adage that covers all faiths and all movements or all calls to action, because I'm very heavy-hearted today, DM, South Africans. Peacemakers look back at July and August with very painful hearts, I'm sure, because we've seen some of the worst opposing forces to peace in the last 2 months in our young democracy's life. Peacemaking is at the heart of stability of a society. And peacemaking and reconstruction and renewal is an absolutely fundamental communication imperative if a society is to thrive. You know, colleagues, in this meeting, Deputy Minister Kekana and myself had the privilege with the GSAS Exco recently to interact with our new minister in the presidency, Mr. Gungubele. And Deputy Minister will recall, and listeners out there, the minister spoke passionately about communication and information being at the cornerstone of stability and happiness and hope in a society. If we're not communicating to have these outcomes, then we really are going to have instability and all the concomitant problems that go along with that. So as we have this webinar today, and as we welcome all of you to participate, we are very mindful that we stand firstly on the cusp of opportunity, but also with some of our recent past that makes the concepts of peace building and peacemaking even more urgent. We stand, however, moreover, in a month where we have always had an opportunity to sharpen our focus, to really renew our understanding of the critical role that women have played in our country. I like the call, moderator, that Women's Month is not just okay, in this month we look at women's issues. I like the call that Women's Month is a call to action, to sharpen our initiatives in that month, but that we should be talking about women's issues consistently and mainstream throughout the course of a year. And therefore, I endorse very fully the very, very strong view of this network and its partners of a partnership moving into the year ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very conscious that August we celebrate the enormous achievement of women in South Africa over many decades to liberate all of us, men, women, young, old, all cultural groups, by their enormous contribution to the liberation struggle. We use the 9th of August as the day that government and social partners, or as a nation, we rise up and say, Malibongwe. The power of women to transform our society is one of the most phenomenal in the world. And it's one of the critical success factors of the South African nation. All of us South Africans have bonds with our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts, whether it be in the political, public, social, or faith sector. And I'm sure there's not a single person here or a South African out there who would not be able to celebrate the women that have crossed their path in their life. GCIS is very honored, program facilitator and the Deputy Minister in the Presidency and panel members to be part of an esteemed partnership like this. The Gertrude Shorpe Mediators Network, we are really excited about this initiative. We're very excited about the opportunities to look and see how we can tangibly work in rebuilding some of the things we've seen. My heart is very sore as a public servant, Yavi, because I know that in the trauma of July, women who've built businesses for decades, small entrepreneurs who maybe were finding their feet, were dealt a terrible blow by people who really did things that are absolutely reprehensible. My heart pleads for the women who now need to stand and hold on to building up their family networks and looking after the children that may have been orphaned or stranded in the violence. And that's what this network is about. I Am South Africa, also a proud partner to you, Yavi, and your network, because this issue of our national consciousness and what made us a nation that's great in the eyes of the world, and the role played by our women, not only in South Africa, but in this continent as a whole, really is to us something to be proud about. And then obviously this very powerful network that's emerged, and I'll touch on that in a minute. We are very, very proud to be part of this. And as GCIS, and on behalf also of my Director General, Ms. Pumia Williams, a formidable leader of women, thank you very much for the honor bestowed in us to be part of this. In conclusion, I just want to say that the issues that we stand before today in this panel discussion are the issues, Yavi, that are actually the struggle of today. You know, we spoke about our liberation struggle, but as a national movement, we now need to deal with these things of gender violence and femicide. We need men and women to stand together on this current era of struggle. And if you look at the era of struggle, yes, unemployment is a social-wide issue. Yes, if you look at environmental damage, it's a social-wide issue. But foremost among the issues of the current struggle, particularly for young men and women out there who might be listening today, I believe as a 50-odd-year-old guy that the issues of women and women empowerment are at the forefront of helping us develop our society for the better. So I do commend to everybody as well today's session. I have indicated to the facilitator and the panel membership, including my DM, I humbly apologize, Yavi, I won't be able to be with you for the whole day because we are planning our 22-23 strat plan today. And make no mistake, viewers and listeners and followers in this team, I will be going out of here to make sure that as we put our minds to 22-23 planning in this department, the issues of the empowerment and mainstreaming of gender are brought to the table. And specifically in conclusion, the National Action Plan that has been tabled, and I'm sure my colleague might reflect on that, Yavi, but the Women, Peace and Security Action Plan, I think there is huge movement or huge opportunity for us to popularize that as government. So we put our resources and our partnership at the disposal of this network. We are honored and privileged to be part of this invitation, and we wish the team a very, very productive and fruitful day. The GCIS team from our media engagement and our cluster operatives are here, and our social media team, so we can able to document some of the ideas that come out and make sure that they serve as the basis for our actions going forward. So I wish this webinar a very, very successful discussion, and I'm very, very privileged to have been invited as GCIS to be part of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michael. We are very honored and privileged to have had you open up for us with such a warm welcome and such an inspiring thought, and such inspiring feelings. When Michael says, my heart is very sore. As a South African, my heart is also very sore. And I think with that resonates across the country in terms of how we feel about the last couple of months, but it is time now to get to the point where we start looking forward and fixing our hearts that are sore. So thank you, Mr. Karen. We anticipate an exciting couple of minutes still ahead in terms of the session, and setting the tone for today. And on the back of Michael Karen's inspiring opening and welcome, we are privileged this morning to be led with the keynote address by the Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Honorable Pinky Kekana, a woman who empowers women and not just talks about it, a woman who has risen irrespective of the odds against her and has taken others with her as she has risen. An African diplomat, she's passionate about this continent. And I can tell you that when it comes to South Africa, it is hard to find anyone who loves their country more and is on a mission to make this country better on a daily basis. On that note, it gives me the greatest pleasure to warmly welcome our Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Honorable Pinky Kekana.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yavi Madurai, our facilitator for today, but also the founder of I Am South African. And good morning to Mr. Michael Karen, our DDG from GCIS. Let me also recognize Mayor Mabatu Mahoshi, the Special Advisor to the Ministry of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability, who's also the convener of the Gertrude Chope Women Mediators Network. Mayor Gloria Serobe, the CEO of the Solidarity Fund, South Africa. Rendani Baumgartner, the MD of RMB, Diversity and Inclusion Advisory, the representatives from the Presidency, from the GCIS, and other government departments, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. 2021 was declared the year of Charlotte Manya Maxeke, a woman and a year like no other. She stood for justice and human rights and is celebrated the world over for making the impossible possible. As this year progresses, it has found itself in creating the essence of this, for we also find ourselves in a year that has given us impossible challenges, to say the least. In this month, known as the National Women's Month, we have succeeded in developing a pattern of extreme violence against our women and children. This year, it was the brutal murder and dismembering of a 23-year-old Nosiqelo Mtebeni. Last year, it was 28-year-old Tshegofatso Pule. The year before that, was 19-year-old Uyinene Mkhwejana. The reality is that this list is long. I could easily spend hours going through the list of names of brutally raped and murdered women and girls in South Africa. This year, more than 23,000 girls under the age of 18 and about 1,000 under the age of just 14 gave birth. An alarming 60% rise in teenage pregnancies this year. Young girls are being impregnated, highly likely due to rape in some cases, with a future of poverty and stigmatization to look forward to. Women are being killed and disposed of as though they are waste. And we hate each other so much. We violently burn, destroy, and shut down the country to show just how much hate we have. Program Director, is this the South Africa we have become? Is this the South Africa we are going to hand over to the next generation, who, by the way, are not waiting in the wings? They are here already, observing and processing what they are inheriting. COVID-19 impacted on the world. COVID's impact on the world has been devastating. Combined with decades of infrastructure and progress eradicated and destroyed in just a few days because of the violence and unrest. Recent statistics show that unemployment is more than half of our population, and vaccination hesitancy means that various levels of lockdown will continue until we reach the herd immunity, preventing us from fully opening the country, delaying job creation, productivity, tourism, and other economic activities. Most importantly, it is preventing us from attracting investment into South Africa. We are delaying the economic recovery plan. In other words, the quicker we vaccinate, the quicker we can start economic recovery, the quicker we start to rebuild, which alleviates cycles of poverty and violence. We have officially reached the stage of not having a choice, but to evaluate and rebuild, and we also have no choice but to do it together as a collective, as a nation that truly wants to create something better. In the words of our own sister, the former Deputy President of South Africa, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, build back better. Public solidarity has never been more prolific, and reform has never been this needed. Combined, it's a powerful driver of building back a better South Africa. Yes, we could be overwhelmed with the challenges and obstacles, but these are also opportunities that can only be accomplished through unity, embracing our diversity, and ensuring inclusion. Women are the creators of the world. We birth the next generation. We mother the nation. We carry families. We hold together sisterhoods. And most of us do it on our own. 2020 statistics show that Sub-Saharan Africa has the most single mothers in the world at 32%, and South Africa is one of the highest in the world at 42%. In context, it's a hard reality. It's hard reality check that needs to be addressed. It will take 135.6 years for the world to reach gender equality. And in Africa, that number is far higher. The children of the 40% of women who are marginalized in so many ways, if we think of the teenage pregnancies I referred to earlier, these children in turn become compounded, marginalized, and a vicious cycle perpetuates. For our children, we have to be at the center of the rebuild and build back better efforts. We simply must be both as beneficiaries of the efforts, but also as the drivers. We have to rise above our challenges, and we can only do that through solidarity. It also means, though, holding government accountable. Minister Mondli Ngungubele in the Presidency is a great believer in the theory of change, which, as we know, is a strategic driver of monitoring and evaluation to ensure impact and accountability. Government's role in any country is creating an enabling environment through policy and law creation. Implementation of those policies and laws to benefit the people of that country, it's about everyone meeting each other halfway. Government, civil society, and the private sector, so to speak. South Africa show autonomy when our Ubuntu is tested and threatened. We need to create an environment where that autonomy is pervasive in a collaborative and constructive way, consistently as we rebuild South Africa. Mayor Charlotte Manya-Maxeke's most famous quote is that, I quote, "This work is not for yourselves. Kill that spirit of self and do not live above your people, but live with them. And if you can rise, bring someone with you." South Africans, let us live where we all have an understanding of the hardships of the poorest person and have a desire to resolve it, to normalize bringing someone with us as we rise. It costs us nothing to bring someone with us as we rise, yet the impact is infinite as it builds a thriving country for all of us to benefit. Thank you very much for listening. I thank you and Malibongwe.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. As always, you have set the tone and inspired us this morning and inspired this morning's discussion. And on that note, let us get into it. Because DM has now spoken about, the state of our country, where we find ourselves as a nation. And it's not like we haven't been in hardship before, but how do we take it forward? So today, as we face alarming unemployment and poverty levels, especially in the youth and women segments of society, we also have to deal with the social ills of GBV and bullying and attacks and racial divide that DM spoke about. And this cannot continue. I'm sure there is nobody in this country that would not agree with me. And the work of rebuilding has to begin now, not tomorrow, not next week, not in a month's time, now. And I have to ask the question, have we lost our way? Or are the gaps of our moral fiber, because there are gaps, obviously, are these gaps an opportunity to correct, to enhance before it is too late? Women are being treated a certain way, and DM went into the details of that. SA's glory days, because we had our glory days where we were celebrated across world stages everywhere. South Africa was the darling of the world, so to speak. Those days are long gone. Now we display hate and violence in the most blatant ways, splashed across TV screens and social media screens all across the world. Investment in our country suffers, and that impacts job creation and being able for our economy to create jobs. So when that happens, we have no other way but to regress. And yet we have to also add vaccine hesitancy, which prevents us from moving forward. So the time to truly reconstruct is now. It's both a challenge as well as an opportunity to rebuild in a way that we decide to, using the autonomy that South Africans can exhibit and can show that DM speaks about. So on that note, I want us to please welcome all the women leaders that are with us today, that have taken the time to be with us today to have this conversation. And I just want to call on them again. Mama Bato Ramagoshi, I know she was here earlier. Gloria Sirobe, and Rendani Baumgartner. Ladies, if I can ask you to please switch on your cameras so that we can fill up the screen and take up space, as they say. And Honorable Pinky Kekana, we are so privileged to have us join us in the discussion as well, as she so beautifully set the tone. So, Gloria, I want to come to you first, and I want to say to you, you know, peace Memabato is going to speak about, you know, the peace and sustainability in terms of the work that they did post the violence that was happening in our country a couple of weeks ago. And peace is just but one part of it. We find ourselves in excruciatingly painful and challenging times, as you know, as DM has referenced, I've spoken about this morning. Where to from here? What are the immediate actions? What are some of the things that we can do and the steps that we can take, actual action steps that we can take to be, you know, collectively as government, as private sector, as civil society? What are some of the things that we can do to start that rebuild and reconstruct? Obviously, bearing in mind that women's roles need to be significant in terms of how, you know, how this all plays out.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
thanks a lot. I guess the important thing really is, and I'm not sure why this message is not going through. I'm talking now to all our colleagues, male or whoever is putting women in trouble. For South Africa, it's a rebuilding time since 1994. And for that, it requires all hands on deck. We are undoing a system which was very, very difficult. And there isn't one stakeholder which should be left all by itself to do this. And women are a big part of this. And so when we find ourselves, even with a COVID space, for example, where no one in the world knows what to do with COVID. So we are no different. Except that in South Africa, it finds women still in a weak space because this scourge is not getting better. So typically when you take your person to hospital attacked by COVID, what are you taking them to? You're taken to what we call healthcare worker. But who's a healthcare worker? It's the women. 90-something% of the healthcare system is occupied by women. And so your whole survival is based on these people. But if these women go home and are bashed and are coming back grumpy to work and it just doesn't get better, it's not helpful even to us. So the way I see it is that we have to throw economic resources to women to be independent. That would be my summary of what we should do. Because it is this lack of independence that actually subject us to all these monstrous activities, because we are not standing on our own economically. I can't stress it enough that a woman who can speak for herself, because economically she can, has a higher chance of surviving the madness. Let me just leave it at that. We can come back to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Rendani, so, you know, collectively as a society, organizations, we need to look at things, you know, there's various roles that every segment of society fits. On the flip side, what is the public's role? And women especially, obviously, in rebuilding and reconstructing our country, our society, our nation, bearing in mind that we don't only have economic recovery to deal with, but social recovery and that social cohesion that we talk about, but we are not seeing. And embracing that diversity, you know, you're the diversity person, embracing our diversity and translating it into actual unity and inclusion in all that we do, the pervasiveness that Deputy Minister spoke about. What is the role of the public and women especially?
Absolutely. Dumela Yavi, the Machero Nabudi, and to all the guests, and particularly the Deputy Minister and the Presidency. It really is a joy and it is a privilege to spend these few moments with you. You know, South Africa is such a unique country in that we not only have the theoretical understanding of what it means to rebuild and reconstruct a country, we have experienced it. And I think it is up to us as women to access those same skills that we used in 1994 to rebuild the country. And as we access those same skills, we need to scale up the reconstruction and rebuilding of this country to not only include societal cohesion, but to also include economic inclusion. And as Mayor Gloria has said, economic inclusion talks to women inclusion in the financial and in the economic structures of our country. So, Yavi, the question of whether women can lead is mute. Women in South Africa have been leading from the back lines and from the front lines for centuries. The question is rather, are women willing to use their leadership to build unity through diversity? And this question must be answered by the more than 25 million women in our homes, in business, and in society. And so women sit in a unique position of influence, and the influence we have is access to children in households. We have access to neighbors in communities. We have access to colleagues in business. And a woman's natural gift to influence needs to be put to good use. So I will make 3 appeals. Women who are mothers, let's talk to our children about the benefits of unity. Let's challenge our children to build relationships across racial lines, across class lines, across ability and disability, sexual orientations, and mental health statuses. And let's help our children to understand that excellence comes in every shape and form. Our previous era did not teach our children this, and it's only us as women mothers who, by the access that we have to children, we can instill this in them from a young age. My second appeal is to women in communities. Let's have the difficult but necessary conversations with neighbors on the weekend as we gather around for our stokvels, around the benefits of vaccination. Let's remind each other about how our grandmothers supported and built thriving communities by pooling together resources, experiences, and even, Yavi, borrowing sugar and eggs from each other. Let us carry this legacy of trust. And that's what the borrowing, the eggs and the sugar from your neighbor was all about. It was about leaving a legacy of trust and using that legacy of trust to build a country as we move forward. And then lastly, to women in the corporate space, let's be a united force in the boardroom. I will repeat that. Let us be a united force in the boardroom. Let us support each other's projects, whether or not we stand to benefit from those projects. Let us speak positively about each other's success. You see, Yavi, I think it's the simple, pragmatic actions that build cohesion and inclusivity. And once we as women have a solidarity amongst each other and a common vision, it will give us the confidence to behave independently, as Mayor Gloria Serube has mentioned. It will give us the confidence to make decisions that build a cohesive society. And it will give us confidence to build an inclusive country. And so let's access those skills and let's make the decision. Thank you, Yavi.
Thank you, Rendani. You know, it's true. I've never thought about it like that in terms of our generation is the first to actually teach our children in terms of unity. You know, it's something that just gets done. We don't think about it necessarily because the previous generation were divided. So this generation, it is upon us that we have to do it. Asmabatu, I am so glad that you are with us and looking lovely this morning. Thank you so much for being with us. You know, when all of the violence was happening and the Gertrude Shope Women Mediators Network was, you know, responding with peace talks and getting, you know, onto the ground, one of the things that, you know, I just felt as a woman is that, and I made the statement around the violence, is that South Africa is being attacked, you know, by us, by our own people, her own children were attacking her. She's wounded and weeping, and she needs her children now, not to attack, but to stand with her. And, you know, the Gertrude Shope Women in Media's Network, you responded immediately. You know, you've got conveners that were on the ground in KZN. The Peace Roundtable was held. Where does peace building fit into the national agenda on the economic recovery, on the rebuilding of our nation, and how do we get working on it, especially getting the economic flow going, because that will solve some of the social ills and the social discrimination and racial divides that are currently happening as well. So where does peace building fit in?
Thank you, Ravi. And let me start by greeting the DM in the Presidency, Mpinki Kekana, CEO of Solidarity, Gloria Sirobe, Merendani Baumgartner, fellow mediators who are on the platform following this, ladies and gentlemen. Before I even start answering your question, I mean, I became excited when Mike said that as GCIS, they are looking forward to partner with the Gertrude Shope Women Mediators to ensure that the message goes out there. Because for any peace mission, any peace building, any person to change, they need to know what is going around. Now, positive messages that will consistently be on everybody's table that GCIS is committing today. I mean, for me, it's 1+ because we've been struggling to communicate at community level. We've been struggling to bring South Africa together because of the COVID. The way we communicate now, we communicate the way we're communicating with you with regards to social media. And this platform, unfortunately, has left a lot of people outside. So therefore, I am glad that we've got GCIS on board that will bring community radio stations so that as a country, we start talking to what Rindani said. We have not taught our children to unite. We have not given our children new skills because we come from a history that was so toxic that we were not trusting each other. Now, the Gertrude Shope Women's Mediators Network had to react immediately when we saw what was happening in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng. Because for us, we know that where there is instability, where there is violence, that affects livelihoods of society and of the country. We cannot talk about the economy of the country flourishing while there is instability in the country. And as the Mediators Network, we called that a peace table. And the peace table that we called is a peace table that is actually implementing the National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security. It was that in action, and we brought all women mediators in the country around the table. The table that was set by women, for local driven peace solutions. So it was multi-stakeholder. It had people who are affected in the locality, because we cannot talk about peace and come with mediators from outside who don't understand what is happening at the local level. Now, going into communities, I heard what Mike was saying, going into communities, in the peace table, we had women SMMEs whose businesses were affected, were looted and band that participated at the peace table. And they were saying, we don't even know what we're going to do from tomorrow, because my business, as I was sitting here, is bent down. And most of those women hired young people and women in their businesses, which implied that in those households, we know by Stats SA that South Africa, almost 70% of households are female-headed households. So it means in those households that depended on this breadwinner being a woman, there is no bread on the table anymore. And where there is poverty and hunger, that has other social repercussions with regards to development, with regards to crime, with regards to other gender-based violence. I mean, what you said earlier on, that South Africa actually is a country at war with itself. Everybody talks about that this nation, the child is crying. But then women said, in this cry, we are going to come with local solutions. We are here, we are going to come with this a round table, pace table, where we are not going to wait for somebody to call us. We're creating our own table. Because if we waiting for somebody to call us, the solutions might not be even talking to our solutions. We know that we have had politics, so we're not going to allow anybody to use our children for their own political or whatever end and destabilize the country. We as mediators, in our training, we know in countries that where we send mediators, that it starts like this, small pockets of unrest. And those small pockets on unrest become national unrest, where the country does not even have, the country becomes, there is no rule of law, there is looting. So we cannot even talk of development or economy anymore, because we would not even have a country to go through. So we said, immediately we stand up to stop this thing from happening, and saying for future, any other interventions, we must be there. In our discussions, we say every time, we quote that we're saying peace is not the absence of war, but the presence of peaceful mechanisms and instruments to resolve conflict. Now, we started to say, let's build a peace infrastructure so that we now, as women mediators, we will intervene in our communities. DERCO has been training women mediators. Now we've got almost 500 people who have been trained. Let's utilize them, because they are a resource that we can use, that we do not, we start with those early warning signs and intervene before it escalates to what is we've seen. We need to ensure that the peace table said, let's immediately intervene to ensure that we de-escalate, we manage, and we prevent, and we create unity of peace in our communities. So we, as women mediators, we are ensuring that let's implement the NAP, National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, and ensure that we put systems in place so that if there are women who are displaced, they know where they will go. Because displacement was not only in the shops. People staying around the places that were looted, they didn't feel safe. So if they don't feel safe, where can they go to where they will get support and we rebuild the economy of the country and not have violence that we're saying? So we are saying we're using different hashtags that we have used as the women makers. Hashtag Swada, don't get involved in things that you don't know how they started. Hashtag Lost That, don't get involved in looting and destruction, because whatever you are looting and destroying now is what is going to sustain you. It's your work tomorrow. So replace fear with love and be a change that you want to see. That is what we have been pushing as women mediators. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you, Asma Batu. Very Very passionate, and I know how passionate you were, you are. And I know everything that happened, obviously, that at the Peace Roundtable, it was very heartbreaking to hear some of those women speak around their businesses, their children. It was terrible. So peace, peace is a sustainable measure. It's a tool to be able to help us grow and develop and create stability in our country, for economic investment also. So peace is not just for when there's war, as you say. Honorable Deputy Minister, I come to you last. Based on your speech and your keynote that set the tone for today, we seem to have, I could be wrong, but we seem to have lost our way. The moral fiber of our society has regressed so much almost that it feels like sometimes like it's invisible. Like we don't have heart anymore. We don't have soul. We're not South African. South Africans were such loving, caring, for each other. How do we start to alleviate the violence, especially against women, the GBV, the bullying, the attacks, the racial division, the hate? How do we start, bearing in mind that we have to build back better and get the economic recovery plan going? How do we start? What is your thinking around that?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yavi, and thanks to the panelists. I think I'm one person who doesn't want to blame apartheid. But I also want to say, having obtained or attained our democracy, did we renew our mindset on the kind of lifestyle that is South Africans, including the value system that we should adopt? And I think the proudly South African spirit that we used to have, why is it dissipating? Because every proud South African cannot do what we seem to be seeing happening, especially the brutality that we see on our girl children. And I think that value system of love and care, it's us as women who can, and I agree with our panelists to say, let's start to have dialogues. As women, let's start it in our families. During dinner tables, the boy child and the girl child, we started there, Rendani, as you were saying. And we go into, neighborhood citizenry meetings and start to do that. The biggest challenge is that we are unable for now to have bigger meetings. There's lots of lights in my house. We are unable to have bigger meetings because of the lockdown. And I think the call for us to say, let's go and vaccinate. Part of it is to say, we now need dialogues. We now need to have sessions where we can start to talk amongst ourselves and say, really, what went wrong? Because we now have to come together. And I think if you look at what our national anthem also speaks to, Nkosi Sikele, God bless South Africa. If we can start to internalize that and want to say to our people, let's live up to those aspirations that we have been yearning for. Why are we dropping the ball as South Africans? Because we know our autonomy was never threatened. When it becomes threatened, we all rise as South Africans and come together. The biggest example, and we'll always cherish that, it's what the taxi associations did and say, we love our jobs, but we love our country more. And we love these developments that have been there, the malls and everything, because they make us to earn our living. And we can't allow people to destroy these beautiful things that we have. And that's the proudly South African element that all of us have. Men and women stood up and started to say, not in our province, not in our region, not in our municipality. And that's the spirit we really want to bring back. Because once we can even start to do that, love and care for our neighborhood, nobody will stand up and start to go and rape or molest or kill brutally young girls out there, rape our elderly and so on. Because you'll be loving yourself. You'll be loving your community and your neighborhood. You know that on your own, with your butler doors and security fences and everything, you can't live as an island. And we now need that togetherness as South Africans. So I agree fully that let's go all out and join the Gertrude Chope Women Peacekeepers and join women in the boardrooms, in the executives and everybody, and say, guys, we cannot be known as women to be pulling each other. We must now pull each other up as we rise, in the words of May Charlotte Maxeke. And you can imagine how beautiful that will be as women rising and raising children, even in our neighborhood, the same way that we were brought up. Let's bring those moral issues back into our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear. In honor of those words, that it starts with us. Ladies, can you believe it's done? We are almost at the end. So I know there's so much to talk about. Actually, there's Fundi in Zamande has said, I think we need more discussions across provinces and local level communities on the question of the role of women in building community cohesion and unity. I thank all the organizers for this webinar. The media must be brought on board to carry the messages coming out of these discussions. We couldn't agree with you more, Fundi. And definitely this was
from Kosatu. So we're going to join hands with, if it's Fundi, I know.
Exactly.
So Fundi, Kosatu must Fundi. Be, all the workers must be with us, women shop stewards and everybody.
And we start with us, like it says, we start with us. So on that note of it starts with us, like DM said, I'm coming to you now in terms of closing remarks. And remember I said to you when I started this out is that we're starting the series of national conversations with accountability and action at the heart of it, so that we don't just talk. It's not just a webinar, we don't just talk. We're actually going to commit to something. So I know Sis Gloria has to leave us because she's got back-to-back meetings. So I'm going to start with you, Sis Gloria. If I can ask you to, kind of just wrap up your thoughts for us in terms of where to from here, and what are some of those commitments and actions from your side, from Solidarity Fund, from Wiphold, as a woman leader. What are some of those things that we can commit to and start to action in the rebuild of South Africa?
Okay, Yavi, and thank you, GM, and thank you, Rendani Mabato. Really appreciate the conversation. It could have been longer, I must say. I think we should maybe start taking the responsibility back to ourselves again. I would pay anything to go to the generation behind me now, the young ones, to start the conversation that says, we are failing the Charlotte Maxeke. She can't be proud of where we are. They did more than us when they had very little resources. And we've got it all. We've got a very supportive government. They are championing the issue of women. We've got the policies. We've got some bit of resources. And yet we are doing much, much less than what they have done. I want to take it back to us to say, let's have a tough conversation that says, we have actually taken away from what they did. And we can't be proud of that. And so part of that for me is that the battle is not over yet. We don't have the luxury to act as individuals yet. You could be the brightest girl from Wits and everywhere, and natural science, law, whatever, but you're not going to make it. The system is quite deep. We still have to work together. We still have to recognize that we are benefiting from the work of everybody else. and we cannot afford to be individualistic yet. And so we have to take the battle back to the collective and actually have a tough conversation amongst ourselves that we are actually failing. You still have the Sophie de Brain is alive. She's watching this. You can imagine the horror story even on her side. I'm not talking now about us being victims. I'm talking about us being sometimes we're part of the murder simply because we are covering up for all sorts. We are protecting, we are complicit as well. We are all these things that shouldn't be. And we are really disappointing them. Let's just go back and talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sis Gloria. Exactly. You know, sometimes we are the perpetrators of patriarchy, and we do need to have those tough conversations. And hopefully this starts something where we start to open up the platform to be able to have those tough conversations. Because as women, this is what we do well. We speak, we share. So we need to use our woman stuff, our womanhood, to start addressing those kind of things and reality checks for ourselves, for our children, because they come after us. And standing on the shoulders of giants, we have a responsibility that you can't just stand on the sacrifices that they made and not understand that it comes with the responsibility to enhance, not destroy what they did. Rendani, are you with us? Yes, you are. There we go. So closing remarks and a commitment from your side, you know, just in terms of where to from here and what would it be? What are you saying? It starts with me and this is what I'm going to do.
Mayor, Deputy Minister, Mayor Gloria Mayor Mabatu, I just want to say, representing the generation that is going to be most representative in the corporate spaces, please don't underestimate Lona. We are really taking them inside, and we need to, I guess, create spaces as young people where we hear your words, but we are able to dialogue around Alona, your words, so that we can really put them inside so that they become part of our DNA. So I would just like to say thank you, and just to say we are not unaware of your words, but also your actions in the work that you do. And my last word, Yavi, is, you know, if you go to all 9 provinces in our country, when a grandmother or a great grandmother passes away, we all mourn because we say a great matriarch has fallen. And the reason we mourn across color lines, across classes, is because when a matriarch falls, we say we are fearful of the unity that will go with her. You hear the children lamenting that because she is gone, we are not sure if we will be able to continue with this unity that she established in the family. And it's interesting, people don't say that about men. Isn't it interesting? They say it about the matriarch. And so my challenge, my personal challenge, is to look on the matriarchs who are surrounding me on this call, and to not just listen to the social media, TikTok and Instagram, and not just to, yes, to listen to all of that, but integrate the words that we hear from the matriarchs we are surrounded by on this call, and say, we are moving together in unity, because the individualism will not help us at all. We are not a culture that is individualistic. And so my role is to call on my colleagues and say, unity is what will bring about cohesion in our country. And it is a choice for every one of the 25 million women in this country. There is no neutrality around it. You are either for unity or you are against unity. You either take the example of our foremothers and you take the example of our current mothers and you move forward with it. It's a choice and you need to make it. You cannot remain on the fence.
We're starting with the difficult conversations already. We can only move forward, right, Rendani?
Yes.
Thank you for that, because yes, and it does feel like it. So when a grandmother leaves or a matriarch leaves, the family is never the same. So it's up to that next generation to keep pulling it together. And now it doesn't matter our racial, allocation, but it's about how women are at the center of our families. They drive, like DM said, they birth the next generation, and they're the mothers of the nation. So we need to remember that we are the next generation of mothers and birthing the next generation. Aus Mabatu, you are in the space, obviously from a peace perspective, but special advisor as well. What would be your commitment and your takeaway, and also what you want to leave South Africans with in terms of how we start to now put women at the center, because we already are, of the rebuild efforts, especially from an economic recovery perspective?
For me, as representing the Catherine Shopper Women's Mediators, as I said earlier on, that be the change that you want. As women, we are very much aware and understand the socioeconomic challenges the country is facing. That we are aware that we've got unemployment, we've got gender-based violence, we've got so much challenges in the country. However, we all agreed in one voice. We are not going to allow this socio-political environment to poison our children to the extent that violence increased. DM spoke about gender-based violence. That has been one of the red marks in this country, to the extent that gender-based violence is regarded as a second pandemic. So as an individual, what I'm committing, but also as peace builder, we're committing that we now are going to go down in communities to have peace tables at community level. As individuals, I agree with what Julia said. Working alone will not go anywhere else. We have to work as a collective. We have to hold hands, because the challenges we're facing in this country are just unsurmountable. So if you want to go alone, we'll not reach that. And we have to bring all women in their diversity around those peace tables to talk about solutions that will have peace in that community. We have to ensure that we bring young people. So as Gertrude Shopper Women's Forum, but also as a Generation Equality Forum, we already have structures. So what we are committing now is that these structures must go at community level, so that we have those early warning signs. We intervene even before the security structure come up. My next door neighbor should be knowing what is happening next door and bring the mediators around to intervene, so that we really are not caught off guard with what we have seen happening. So I am committing that in the coming 5 years, as we implement the Generation Equality Forum, the Compact on Women, Peace and Security, and the humanitarian aid, and the NAP on women, peace and security, that we will have a critical mass of women mediators at local level that will ensure that we do not adopt any destructive tendencies that will make this country to be the country for lawlessness and undermine whatever form of development that we want to see going ahead. So social cohesion, nation building starts in our homes. So let's focus on prevention programs. DM, you say you don't know what has happened. I mean, we are in a country where we're thinking that there is no deterrent for perpetrators. So that in itself, as we're building peace in communities, the perpetrators also are becoming just brazen to say we can do anything and get away with it. So let's bring everybody together. Let's have prevention programs. Let's involve communities. We've got child-headed household. How do we intervene in the child-headed household? We've got families where children know that they're fathers, but they don't take care of them. How do we heal? Because there is a lot of pain in this nation. And when we're busy with the development of the NSP on GBV, the issue of healing came at the core that South Africa is bleeding. We need to come with healing programs. So let's also focus. I think what I will commit is that as we convene the peace tables, the trainings around healing and counseling should be key on what, so that we have a different community going forward. Thank you, Rana.
Thank you, Ausma Batu. I've written it down. Critical mass of mediators at a local level. So you know me, I will write it down. I will come back and we will tell everyone who those mediators are. DM Pinky Kekana, you've been with us since this morning. Thank you so much for staying with us throughout, for contributing, and not just contributing, but leading this conversation. And we obviously don't want the conversation to stop. As Megloria said, this needs to be expanded. We need to have these difficult conversations. What are you, in your closing remarks, what would you want to commit to? I'm sorry I'm putting you on the spot, but what would you want to commit to when you said, we must hold government accountable? What would you say you want to commit to in terms of this rebuild of South Africa?
Look, Yavi, if you look at the inequality gap, it's something that I want to choose to challenge. But we can only do that if all of us work towards making sure that we unlock our country. Because we are under lockdown now. And we want full vaccination programs, aggressive ones, so that we can reach herd immunity. And we need to join hands with the Minister of Health and the Deputy Minister and our MECs in the Departments of Health to say, let's move aggressively to show our people the benefits of vaccination. And that's one commitment I'm doing. Because once we do that, then we will be able to rebuild our economy. We will be able to have the country into full swing in as far as job opportunities, job recovery plans, and all other things. And I think for as long as we don't do that, even the informal sector where women are predominantly there, and these women who are also big in the Stokvel savings program. I mean, if you look at the amount of money that women are doing in this informal economy, we now have to start to have dialogues and say to them, look, you are doing these things, you took kids to schools through these mega salaries and monies that we are able to do. The banks are becoming more richer. Banks, what is in it for women? In the Stokvels, the savings that are doing, that brings profits to you. So the women's economic and financial inclusion will become one of the things that will help us to deal with the inequality gap. And vaccination will be important so that we are able to reach the herd immunity and reopen our country for recovery. So those are the things. And I think, Yavi, seated here, we are not even anywhere, most women in South Africa, about the discussions on the African Continental Free Trade Area. So those are some of the things that we now have to start to talk about. But let's start with Simple things that are tangible for our women, for young people, and then take them through the importance of vaccinating so that we can be able to move out of lockdown. Thank you very much. The world is now active. Everybody, the economies are recovering. We are left behind, and it can't be right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, DM. You know, you speak truth. I don't know about all of you, but I was very annoyed. I was personally annoyed. You know, we sitting in lockdown, we were put into level 4, and you're watching Wimbledon, and like things are back to normal. You know, soccer, football, things are back. And I just thought to myself, you know, first world countries, the rich are getting richer. Africa is getting poorer because we are still stuck under lockdown levels. So DM speaks truth in terms of, you know, once the vaccination, once we reach herd immunity, the country opens. It literally is a key to unlocking our economy and moving our people into participation and activities that allow our economy to grow. And when women have money in their hands, they are able to deal with things like the gender-based violence because they are you know, some of them are in difficult situations and circumstances. DM opens up, you know, the conversation, and all of the panelists spoke about how we need to have difficult conversations with each other. So we hope today that we've had a difficult conversation today. We have faced realities that are impacting us. We have looked at ourselves as women and have said, you know, these are things that we need to deal with. That's not an easy thing to do. So I hope that we have started what will become a continuous conversation in your homes, at the workplace, as they call it, at the water coolers, the water cooler conversations, at the workplaces, in your families. It's Friday, it's a weekend. You are going to be seeing friends and family. Have the conversations around, have we lost ourselves in this, and how do we find our way back? How do we start to build? And we can only build together, because divide and conquer can no longer, it's not proving, you know, it's not proving itself. We have to come together in order to work and build and create something that we are proud of as a generation, as this generation of leaders, to hand over to our children. As at today, I would be embarrassed as this generation's leader, one of the leaders of this generation, and we all are, to hand over a country that looks like this, that feels like this, to my child and say, you know, this is your birthright. I'm embarrassed. I can't sleep at night knowing that this is what we are doing to our children. We are letting them inherit mayhem. So it's up to us. We don't need men's permission to be able to fix and build and rebuild. We are, if you think about it, if 40%, like DM said, 40% of this country are single mothers, or 40% of the world are single mothers, that means that 60% of our children are growing up without fathers. You know, the math. So that means that it's up to us. It's not going to, we can't wait to say, okay, their father needs to teach them. No, we need to teach our children. May Gloria said around 70% of our health workers who are under pressure, they have been stretched beyond anything. These same women are going home and being, you know, banged around and abused. What are we doing as neighbors and not entertaining our neighbor being beaten? Yes, you know, mind your own business, all of those kind of things, but it starts with us. DM said something very important. It starts with us. So in that spirit, and I've made a record of everyone's commitments, the vaccination drive from DM Pinky Kekana in the presidency, Ausma Batu, the critical mass of mediators, May Gloria Sirobe, in terms of we need to have those difficult conversations. And she literally said, if I could pay the next generation or the previous generation, she would. How do we now start to become the giants on whose shoulders our children stand? On that note, and on behalf of GCIS, which I thank from an I'm South African perspective for hosting this conversation and this platform, we thank you so much for being able to extend it. And Michael Curran said this morning, my heart is sore. Michael, I hope, and I know you're not listening, but I hope when you watch this recording that this does a little bit to fix your heart that is sore. Thank you so much to the panelists and to the audience. We are very grateful for your time, and hopefully we move forward into a Build SA Back Better scenario. Thank you so much.
SA
Thank you, Ravi. Yeah.
Build
Thank you,
SA
thank
back
you.
better.
Hashtag
Yes.
Ubuntu.
Thank you,
Hashtag
dear.
Ubuntu Talks.
Yes.
Hashtag Ubuntu Talks and Build SA Back Better.
Yes.
Thank you, DM.
Recording
Thank you,
stopped.
Asma Batu.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a lovely weekend,
You
everyone.
too. You too.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, every time.
Thanks, colleagues, and enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ignatius Masilela. How are you, Jabu? Now you can get off my, now I can stop WhatsApping you. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go breathe and go find some water. And we'll do the